Welcome! We're the founders of Wild Food Cafe, Joel and Aiste, and I'm here to talk about Rawgust. We're going raw for the month of August, and we're going to answer some questions and have a little discussion about things raw food related and not. Even though raw food is becoming more and more mainstream and accepted and known and enjoyed and loved, there are still people there that fear that they're not gonna get enough nutrients and calories eating raw food diet. What do you think about that?
I think, or in my experience I should say, we're all individuals. And it's best that we tailor make our food and nutritional choices to suit us in the moment, whenever that moment is, whether it's morning time, midday time, evening time, whether it's summer, autumn, winter or spring. And depending on us as unique individuals with our own genetic makeup, where we're living in the world, etc. So there is a tremendous amount of variety and possibilities. We've got to remember that there are absolutely no exaggeration, infinite variations and possibilities and ways of experimenting with raw food, and of course infinite more on top of the infinite, depending on your definition of raw food, whether you're just sticking to the raw food police 116 degrees Fahrenheit limits, or whether you're taking raw in a broader sense, as we like to take it quite often, which is spelling it R-O-A-R, as in raw, food that makes you go raw. And it doesn't have to be specifically within a very strict temperature range. There's a bit of wobble room in that. There's a bit of space for experimentation. Certain foods might work very well up to 50 degrees, 60 degrees, 70 degrees. Some things just seem to work magically more above 40 degrees Celsius. For instance, if I was blending certain dense fruits or vegetables to make a wonderful creamy dip or sauce or soup or curry. For instance, some of my favourites would be the butternut squash or any of the pumpkins, and things like sweet potato. If I was to blend that in my Vitamix and I wanted the most creamy, silky, smooth texture, which is not only going to make a wonderful texture, it's going to make it much easier to digest, especially for people with more subtle digestive systems. And also it's going to release more flavours, which of course is the argument with generally cooking food, but we don't have to cook it to the degrees and extremes of microwaving, of deep frying, of boiling something till it's lost its colour and it's beige. So yeah, blending that butternut squash, for instance, in a Vitamix till it's 50 degrees, 55 degrees, 60 degrees in some cases, you're going to get a wonderful result. Also, as a lot of people have probably experienced in trying to make raw hummuses, you can make lovely, totally raw hummuses. You can even make hummuses with no chickpeas, although a lot of people from the Middle East would argue with you that that's not hummus. If you want to make, in our experience, the most delicious, magical, sprouted, organic chickpea hummus, the secret is to sprout them, put lots of love and excellent water, and then blend them into a raw food recipe, but just before you blend them, to blanch them in hot water for merely a couple of seconds, a maximum of a minute. There's a huge difference between having a sprouted, activated chickpea that gets a quick blanch for a minute than a chickpea that has been from dry, cooked for many, many hours at a very high heat, then possibly tinned, then reheated. There's a lot more vitality and a lot easier to digest for a lot of people. Will find a chickpea hummus a lot easier to digest and a lot smoother and creamier just from a tiny blanch. It just does something to it.
It's funny, we had some people doing Rawgust with us, wild Rawgust, that thought that tinned chickpeas are raw, which they then later found out that tinned chickpeas are not raw, which I think is already a great benefit of wild Rawgust, just informing people that most of the food in supermarkets, if it's packaged and if it's tinned and if it's not in the fridge, it's not raw. And it's not really about just becoming purist and eating just raw foods for the sake of it, but that awareness of and knowing that most of the stuff in supermarkets isn't raw and it's excessively processed, it raises a lot of questions and it expands awareness about food and where it comes from. And I think that's the main benefit of doing something like that, like going raw for a month, just to explore what's out there and realizing that actually there are not so many unprocessed food choices in the supermarkets even today.
And doing the experiment on oneself, really seeing how our body feels after a given amount of time on properly raw foods really, you know, beyond the industrial food matrix. So, you know, whether that's a month and it's Rawgust, or whether we choose to do it for a year or longer, after a month we're definitely going to feel a difference. Some people feel it after a day.
I can feel it after a day. I feel wonderful. I have so much energy and vitality and just this lightness of being and mental clarity. I love doing it, and I would keep going on and on and on if it wasn't for the climate and mostly climate and busy lifestyle in the middle of London, which has to have a bit of adaptability and social element to it. But I love having raw food as a prime food group in my lifestyle. It's awesome. It's raw.
We find it easier to be more flexible in our approach to raw foods than being very strict, as I've done for a good decade in my past, and more extreme. And there's a lot of options, whether they're truly raw or a bit more on the whole food side. And there's a lot to say about, as long as we're eating whole foods and as long as they've been minimally prepared and minimally processed, then that's really the raw food diet in a broader sense. It's eating whole foods that have not been aggressively processed, fantastic, or overheated, overcooked. You know, that's a broader approach to raw foods. And definitely, you know, you can bring in elements of wild foods in there as well, as hugely important.
Tell us more about water. I know you're quite a water connoisseur, and when people get onto a raw food diet and start refining their foods and choosing more natural foods, the body feels it and the body becomes a lot more sensitive to everything, including water, and then the quality of water becomes quite important. Mm-hmm. So what are your suggestions about water intake, how much people should drink, and the quality of water as well?
It's a very good point. So yeah, reaching for my water. Water, for me, is the key and the foundation to all nutrition on many levels. Always remembering how much intention can go into each sip, receiving each sip of water. It's a very programmable substance. If we're feeling the need for clarity, we'll drink some water and feel clarity. Being foundational to nutrition, a lot of nutrition will only truly get absorbed into our cells, and our cells will only be able to release their cell waste and detoxify and poop their cell waste out of the individual cell into the elimination channels and out of our central elimination channels. That can only occur through having enough water and the cells being juicy enough and overflowing. So we've got to have living waters, vibrant waters, full of vitality that can diffuse into our cells, cleansing our cells, delivering nutrients into our cells and removing wastes. We need good water to do that. And that should happen before any other thought to more complex forms of nutrition. If that's not being taken care of, then all the other complicated nutritional ideas, whether it's vegetarian, vegan, raw, cooked, paleo, you name it, is going to have a minimal effect, increased strain, and just a waste of money to be focusing on what foods to be eating if we're not taking care of the nutrition of the key nutrient first, which is water. It's the delivery vehicle for the nutrition. It is the solution, the overriding solution. And we've got to remember that all of the best foods that we could possibly eat, they're all water-based life forms. So let's go to the source of all of the foods, which is living waters. So that can best be achieved really through going and collecting your own spring water, wherever that's possible. Otherwise,
like we do, crazy.
Otherwise, spring water in glass bottles. Otherwise, we have to think seriously about all the options that exist. And there's a lot of ideas and products on the market, all the way through from distillers to ionizers to filters, and many people have different polarized arguments about which is right and best. I prefer to err on the side of looking at systems that most closely mimic nature. And there's two main aspects to water treatment. One is that the contaminants should be filtered out, and secondary, once they're filtered out, the water has to be revitalized with life force. And there's many ways that it does that in nature. But one of the major ways is through volticular action. Being alive and moving, basically, and moving in the way nature moves, which is in a vortex, rather than being stagnant, because as we know, stagnant bodies at rest disintegrate as entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, states. So let's stay moving. Moving water is living water, dead water is stagnant water. So we should remind ourselves of that, and that as water-based beings, move our bodies to be living bodies. So really, if we're talking amounts here, I really recommend to everyone to look into 3 litres of water a day as a minimum, no matter age, activity or nutritional choices. 3 litres is a good minimum, and even if we're only drinking no water a day, we can start with 1 cup a day, and if we increase 1 cup a day each day over a 2-week period, we can get up to 3 litres. I wouldn't recommend it in one go because it's going to cause a great detox. That's why after just about every therapy we could possibly experience or mention, afterwards a responsible therapist is always going to encourage you, remember, when you go home tonight, drink extra water. So if we just remember to be hydrated the whole time, it's going to allow all the goodness to flow into our lives and all the stuff that is outworn to exit our lives. It's going to allow all the organs and the digestive system to function thoroughly. It's going to allow our body to recuperate, rejuvenate and rest. And so much of the time, I'd say at least 90% of most people's food cravings is actually the body trying to signal for water, but human habits as of recent centuries being a bit more lured to drinking things like Coca-Cola. We might be addicted to sugary soda pop substances, and we may eat foods not recognizing that the actual urge and signal from the body is really from water.
Can I just say something about that?
Please.
I think all the things that you said about the quality of water and the filtration and the spring water are so important and vital. At the same time, I feel that especially in the West, having all this infrastructure available, we often get too mental about our experience of everything around us and forget to appreciate that we actually do have water, running water that is clean and free of disease available to us, and we don't have to walk for miles and miles with a little bucket on our heads to bring water that we don't know if we can drink or not. So I just invite everyone to remember that appreciation for whichever water we have, and then take action to improve the water with whichever filtration method, or going to spraying, and try to find ways to appreciate water more, because the more we appreciate water as an element, as an essential part of our lives, the more we will have clean water available to us, because the water will come back to us in a way that it used to be, clean and pure and pristine. The more we respect the water, and the more we appreciate water, and the more we have reverence towards water, and have our hearts open about it and not just stuck in our minds looking for the next big filtration method, the more we appreciate the situation of water, the more water will reward us and come back into our lives being pure and pristine and as a deliverance vehicle for positive states of being.
So really, when looking at a water filter system, if we look at a water filter system and revitalization system which mimics the way that the earth and its soils and its layers of minerals and rocks and sediment naturally filter the water, and we can actually find filters that do that through several stages, make sure that all the contaminants are taken out. But of course, all of that, as Aiste said, is totally secondary to what we could call the Masaru Emoto experience. I don't know if he was a doctor. The Masaru Emoto experience of giving thanks and praise and love for water's existence, and just from treating water either like a divine substance or the opposite. Water will respond according to how we treat it.
Really helpful. I have a final question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when people start eating raw food, they usually get detox symptoms, more or less, depending on the levels of the health and well-being. And what are your suggestions for the people that feel like they're detoxing on raw food and can't operate in the everyday life? Let's say, if someone gets nauseous or spotty or have mood swings, what are your remedies for those kind of symptoms? Let's say I'm juicing and I'm experiencing lightheadedness and nausea or something like that. I would have more thicker and more nutritious smoothies to slow down the detox process, and maybe have some more like a salad to slow the process down. Absolutely. Right? Is that a good approach to
That's a good
detox?
approach. Some denser foods, some more grounding foods. So the mineral rich foods, things like raw chocolate, the highest quality you can get. As with everything else, the highest quality oils that we can get, cold pressed oils, organic oils, things like avocados, nuts and seeds. It's always good to feel kinesthetically in our body what we're feeling elementally and what would balance that. For instance, if we really felt our body and felt a bit funny and we're trying to elementally and kinesthetically perceive, not on an intellectual level, what's up with our body, we could feel like, oh, I feel really cold and damp. So if we were on raw food, we could eat a drier raw food, like a dehydrated food, dehydrated cracker, and that could be any kind of, preferably vegetable rather than fruit, and nut or seed, and have that drying experience. That might very well work. That might not work if it's too rich a food and our body's not used to digesting raw foods. Obviously, the younger and more disease and injury free we are, the easier it's going to be for us to adapt. Whereas the older and more set in our patterns we are, the more intense the transition is going to be. So possibly the food that could work for you is some really high quality organic popcorn or some rice cakes, which you might be more used to, and maybe upgrade to always advise to have organic foods, especially the mass-produced staples like corn, soy, rice. But for instance, let's look at popcorn or rice cakes. They are a very drying food. Corn traditionally seen as a bit more heating, at least from an Ayurvedic perspective, and rice is a bit more cooling. But we can both see how both of those foods are very dry and very almost airy and almost like styrofoam, like they would absorb cold, damp moistness in the body. And we can do great things these days. Rice cakes are just mainly heated rice, at least 99%. And popcorn, we can make popcorn in an air popcorn machine, thereby not needing to cook and make rancid any oils, and we can pour some wonderful whatever we like on top. More raw coconut oil, If we wanted to use a butter or a ghee, if we wanted something dairy in there, and of course adding a really high quality salt is going to be a way of making something that is mass produced at a really low quality, sort of cinema grade popcorn, to an artisan homemade popcorn that's actually really healthy and might provide the element that's the perfect balance for you, and in a more digestible form. So that's just one case in point, and there's many other variations. Maybe we'll need to do some kind of colonics work or hydrotherapy. Maybe we would be served by having something that gets our intestines moving, a bit more on the laxative end of things, perhaps some kind of cleanse, perhaps some kind of clay, like zeolite clay. Thing is to try, there's a huge palette of wonderful choices out there. Keep experimenting with them all and having fun, listening to, observing, noticing how your body responds, and using your consciousness and your life as the experimenter and the experiment, and witness and observe and serve yourself with what enables you to feel lighter, clearer, more full of vitality, consciousness and juiciness.
But I feel the main gift of this raw experiment and a raw lifestyle, as in ROAR, is this expanding consciousness about the possibilities that are available for us every day, and different combinations of food and trying new things out. That process itself is so liberating and empowering that it's probably even more important in the process of discovery than the lifestyle itself. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. It's all about continuing and enjoying the journey, and never thinking that, oh, we've arrived, this is the right way to do it. As long as we just stay vegetarian, as long as we just stay vegan, as long as we just stay 100% organic, as long as we just stay raw, as long as we just stay paleo, and stick within,
it's all going to be okay.
It's all going to be okay. But it takes a little bit of the joy and mystery out of life, of continuing to try new things all the time, and just enjoy the journey, and know how many possibilities exist, and that by staying in the realm of possibilities, that makes us more alive. As soon as we think we know it all and we just stick to something, it becomes a bit more of a systematic, intellectual, less living experience. Great. So thanks very much for joining us today, and please come visit us at the cafe. Come on one of our courses, subscribe to the Wild Food Cafe channel, and post any questions or comments that you would love, and of course share this video with all of your friends, and connect with us on all the social media channels. If you haven't signed up for our free newsletter and amazing ebook, then sign up on our website. And thanks very much for joining us today, and enjoy the wildest Rawgust.